Hey guys, welcome back to Cult of Film. Today I have with me my nephew, and many of you may know him as Kolour Kode, DJ and music composer extraordinaire. And he's going to be helping me out this week as we tackle probably one of my favorite movies of the year, or I guess it was last year, 2023, Godzilla Minus One. This was as big a surprise to me as the last Godzilla film that the Japanese did, Shin Godzilla, a few years ago, which also blew me away. And I don't know, man. This was a film that looked like it probably had $100 million budget. It only had a budget between 10 and 15 million.
15.
Yeah, and it was going toe to toe with Oppenheimer and other films. And it's a Godzilla film, which Godzilla, outside of Japan, in some ways, this is a franchise that is sort of looked at as kind of a joke. I mean, I'm a nerd and I grew up with this stuff, so I'm always down for a Godzilla flick, whether it be new or old. But the last two Godzilla films have earned a level of respect as films that I don't think any other Godzilla films ever have. And yeah, Godzilla Minus One. What did you think, man?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Really happy to be
yeah.
here. This is really cool. Thank you. And yeah, honestly, when I got the invite to me and Mike, my cousin Mike, their other nephew, they invited us to go to the movie with them. And first of all, I had no idea that there was a new Godzilla movie coming out. To my understanding, I thought it was just the crossover between Godzilla and King Kong, which I have seen the first. There's been two.
Right. There
Correct?
was Godzilla, then there was Godzilla and Kong, and now there's a new Godzilla versus Kong. Right.
Yeah. So those are the only ones that I was familiar with. I had no idea about this Minus One film until they told me that this one takes place just at the tail end of the Second World War, and that alone caught my eye because I am a history buff. World War II is probably, I mean, there's nothing good about wars, but that's probably the war that interests me the most as far as American history.
Sure.
Yeah, I still haven't seen Oppenheimer. That's another, obviously another World War II film that's out. But I went in with absolutely zero expectations, and it was so good, man. I mean, I was telling, our Uncle Ken, Kyle, and my cousin Mike, like, there were many moments in that film where I completely forgot that it was a Godzilla film. Like, the character plot lines, all of the dynamics between all the characters, it was just so grounding and so good and so heartfelt. And there were moments where your heart just gets ripped out, that you just completely forget that there's a fucking 1,000-foot lizard terrorizing the place. Like, we're worried about, this conversation that these two lead characters are having and the baggage that our protagonist, what's his name? Kuishi was just carrying, from the very beginning opening scene where he froze. And that obviously he carried that with him for the entire film, and that was his internal battle. And like I said, we just kept forgetting about Godzilla at some points. Like, we were just really focused in on Koichi, just really trying to, conquer his inner demons and forgive himself. And it was just such a good film. The characters were great. The character plot lines were great. The acting was amazing. I mean, I love complete Japanese dialogue films.
Yes.
It's just so good. So good. I really enjoyed it. It was a great film.
No, and that's just it. It's just a good movie.
Yeah.
And it's something that it's, some people might, laugh at this, but this is something you can watch with your mom and dad or your grandpa, and it's just a solid movie. Like you said, it's a character-driven film. It is a character-driven drama, true drama, that just happens to have the threat as Godzilla. And Godzilla, it's not like the films that most people think of when they think of a Godzilla film. It's not Godzilla. In fact, Godzilla is probably only on screen maybe for 3 epic battles. The rest of it,
very low screen time.
Right. It's, but the thing is, man, it has made him more fearsome. It's made him much scarier because when he comes on screen in this movie, there's not that, obviously if you watch this show, there's going to be spoilers. So if you haven't seen this movie, now is your turn to go and watch it, because we're going to try to be sensitive, but we're probably going to drop some spoilers. But when Godzilla powers up in this movie, and that's the other thing, the beautiful thing too about this movie, the restraint that makes Godzilla so formidable and scary, is he's not zapping with his heat breath every 10 minutes. He only does it maybe less than a handful of times, but man, when he does it, it is absolute anarchy. It's so powerful. It's very much, it reminds me of the original Jaws, where you don't see the whole shark until the end, but when
I was
he's
literally just
around,
going to bring that up. That conversation that we had on our way to the mall in San Gabriel Valley, we literally talked about that very point. How the entire movie is just edging you about the shark that we still haven't seen yet, until that last maybe 15 minutes of the movie where he just takes Quint
right,
out.
right.
Oh no, even before that, when he just peeks out of the water,
right.
and then what's the cop's name?
Roy Scheider. I don't remember the
Yes, you know that, you know exactly what shot I was talking about. He literally
Yes.
peeks out of the water for 2 seconds and then goes away. And that was, I think that was the first visual that we got of Jaws. But yeah, not to sidetrack, you are correct. With Godzilla, he shows up maybe a total of 10 entire minutes of screen time, and the whole powering up thing, they're edging you with that one for sure.
It's an event when it happens.
Yeah.
It's true filmmaking. I put it up there with Jaws. I put it up there with American Werewolf in London, because you don't see the werewolf until the end. You maybe see bits and pieces. You only see the shark. You see the fin, but you don't see a whole shark until the end. With Godzilla, you do get great shots of Godzilla, but it's not. They use him sparingly as the threat. Humans that the people have to deal with. I think that's what it has to be. Like any monster movie or like any zombie film, it's not really about the zombies. It's not about the monster. It's about how that situation affects the people. And
How they
the
react.
beauty of Godzilla -1, to your point, is that it is absolutely about how these people are dealing with, one, just coming out of one of the worst wars in human history.
2 bombs already.
Yeah, I
2
mean, yeah.
bombs.
So the bombs have already dropped. I mean, our main character Koichi returns to a Japan that is completely flattened, parts of it burnt to a crisp, and you think, wow, now this dude has to deal with Godzilla, and it's beautifully done. It's like, okay, these people can't get any lower, and I think one of the more interesting parts of, there's so many interesting parts of this movie, but putting it in the time when it's set, so like right at the end of World War II, whereas we're used to watching Godzilla movies where they have laser guns and all this advanced technology, a dilapidated Japan now has to fight a nuclear powered monster with what? Like, what do they have? And they basically think their way out of it, like on top of dealing with the drama and dealing with people that are dead or dying. Our character Koichi is just given a random baby by a woman as soon as he gets home. Like this guy, he freezes when he should have shot at Godzilla when they're first attacked in the beginning of the film. He gets home, he's handed a baby out of nowhere by some woman who doesn't think she can take care of it. He
just found out his family has been killed too. And like pretty much, everybody's pretty much,
And the neighbor that's told him that his family is gone is ragging on him for not having been a kamikaze pilot. And it's just layer on top of layer on top of layer of difficulty and just really bad news. But you watch him and the people around him, from his neighbor to his girlfriend to the guys in his unit, a really interesting character that's an engineer, have to sort of think their way out of this problem. And I think that's probably one of the more interesting parts of this film, is that it's not just, okay, well, is the secret weapon ready? Okay, we need to roll it out and destroy Godzilla. You watch them think their way through, and the different things they try and they put together. It is very, very thoughtful writing and really thoughtful filmmaking, because again, it you know what it does? It runs away from every Godzilla trope you've ever seen in every Godzilla movie. It doesn't fall prey to any of it because it's about the people facing the threat, and the threat just again happens to be Godzilla.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
There's sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. Continue. I was still
No,
kind of collecting.
I was just going to say that it's the director Takashi Yamazaki. Not only did he write this film, not only did he direct this film, but he was fully hands-on with the special effects, with the VFX. Like he was building
I just read
sets.
about that.
Unbelievable. A
$15
lot
million
of
budget.
Oh my God. Like
Hmm.
you watch this movie, and again, you think about the history of Godzilla films. It's like, okay, that's clearly a guy in a rubber suit fighting another guy in a rubber suit. And, the stuff they did in like the 90s and the 2000s, they got better, but it still wasn't that flawless Hollywood effects that you would expect. And this movie does it on 15 mil. This movie looks at least 150 million. And the fact that the writer director also had his hands all over the practical effects. And that's what I appreciate too, is clearly there was a lot of CGI done on this and a lot of CGI Godzilla, but it is done in such a skillful way. The
Not at
craft
all.
of it,
Yeah.
it feels so real. And then you add on top of the fact that they were still, with their money, building physical sets, building cities, model ships and model cars and model trains and all of that. I really appreciate that because I think the temptation nowadays is because technology just keeps getting better that we're when we should be running away from practical effects, it seems that there are more and more new hungry filmmakers doubling down on practical effects. And I love that because I live for practical effects.
Yeah, no, 100%. The way that, I mean, even the close-ups of Godzilla, like, were just so beautifully done, and just the detail. And I know nothing about, computer generated images or anything like that, but it was just so good. I really didn't have any critique at all as far as the visual
Right.
aspect of this entire film. I mean, you could like the close-ups of Godzilla where you can see his eyes just staring down Koichi, like it
Oh,
was so personal, like there's a personal
right.
vendetta between the two.
Right.
And like one was just he just kept one-upping Koichi throughout the film.
Right.
Specifically the the ocean mine scene when they were having
Right.
to get all the leftover mines out of the ocean, but then they were pretty much just like making him follow, and then like at one point they made him swallow it, and then his mouth got blown up, but then just a couple minutes later he started regenerating.
Yeah, he Wolverines it, right.
Yeah, that was sick.
Yeah, that's the other thing too, is it goes back to the original, I guess, ethos of the original Godzilla, of it being Godzilla himself being a byproduct of the
Nuclear
nuclear
test.
age.
Mhm.
And do we really know what we're doing? Does it really save us, or will this be our destruction? And that's really what Godzilla is. He is that in this film, but on top of it, really excellent observation I didn't think of either, is Godzilla is not only, it's man versus nature, it's sort of man versus science gone awry, but it's also man versus himself. So much of what is piled onto the character of Koichi, just
Mhm.
he's lost everyone. He's responsible for a child that isn't even his. He's responsible for, his girlfriend. He's responsible for the men in his unit. And they're doing everything they can. And damn it, Godzilla is still there. They keep going and going and going. And it becomes this existential battle between Koichi and Godzilla. And as much I don't want to spoil for people how they resolve it. But again, just when you think this movie can't get any better, the resolution of how the decision is made of how do we finally do this, again, really brilliant, really smart. And I would say we have, again, not to spoil anything, again, if you haven't seen it, pause this right
Mhm.
now, go watch it. But if you have seen it and you're a fanboy like us and you want to talk about it, the dividends that are paid at the end, where we get kind of a surprise at the very end, at which you think, oh boy, there could be more, and then just as the credits are about to roll, we get sort of a second ending, which is even more ominous. And this is a movie that just keeps on giving. At no point was I ever bored, whether we were just watching Koichi and his girlfriend figuring out how to get food for the baby, whether we were watching him drink with his men and then figuring out what they have to do, that as much as they are war weary and they're just like, we're over this. This is the exact same thing. Whether it was war, it was actually, this is even more important, because what happened in the war, not all that stuff was above board. I mean, we didn't have ejector seats in our planes. We had tanks that weren't really working well. They were telling us that we should just suicide it.
Kamikaze, give your life.
And instead, they choose to use their minds, and they choose to pledge their life to this solution, not just to defeat Godzilla, but to not die. The battle becomes for life as opposed to dying. The samurai did, where the honor is in death. It's like, no, now
giving your life for the greater cause. Yeah,
and that was a really beautiful thing. I was really shocked.
They got me so hard.
Right.
I mean, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
Yeah. I was not expecting that. And then the flashback sequence was just like, they were thinking ahead.
Yeah. No, they really were. And it surprised me as well how honest this movie was about the things that the Japanese military didn't do correctly. And this is not a rah-rah sis boom bah, America did everything right. I mean, war is war, war is hell, war is terrible. And in every war, there are things.
You got.
There's war profiteering.
Yeah.
There's people that don't always make the right decision. But I was surprised that a Japanese film, coming from a Japanese perspective, would be as critical of some of the decisions that were made by the Japanese military during World War II. That really surprised me, but that also showed that the further we get in history, sometimes the more it's not, because it's not as close to us, because so many of those men that died that were in that war, it's like, my grandfather was in that war and he passed long ago. We are intellectually and morally honest enough to have conversations about, okay, yeah, probably shouldn't have done that one, or okay, here's what worked, here's what didn't. And that really impressed me, because it wasn't about who was right in the war. It was about these characters that you really fall in love with, that you really care about, because every single character in this movie has had the screws put to them, especially Koichi. And it's like, okay, great. It's 1945 and I'm an American watching this Japanese film. I don't care. These are human beings in an existential crisis, focused on an existential threat. And I want them to win, because that's what needs to happen. And it's a really beautiful thing. And again, so well crafted, so well shot. Like, there were whole shots of this film where they kind of held like on the sea. Like, you just have a composed shot of the sea. You'd have just these beautiful, like, I know the cities were fake, but even in the destruction, just how he chose to shoot things. You'd have beautiful close-ups and medium shots of the characters, and then boom, you'd pull us back to the macro, where you see the city flattened, or you'd see a city that wasn't flattened before Godzilla gets there. And just, there isn't a frame of this movie that isn't pretty.
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah, specifically the zoom out when I don't know if this is going to be spoiling it, but when something happens,
we've warned them 3 times by now, so let it rip.
God, what's her name? Noriko, his girlfriend or whatever.
Noriko.
Yeah. The moment where we thought she perished, and it zoomed out from Koichi just completely breaking down, screaming in agony, and then what's the acid rain starts falling down because the city just got blown up by Godzilla's heat ray. That was powerful. I definitely shed a tear or two on that one.
Yeah, that's the thing, is this movie, and again, hopefully you guys have already seen it
by this point.
But and again, we warned them. but there are so many really great poignant moments in this movie, hard tugs. Like if any of you out there are, if you guys watch K-dramas and how the Koreans are so good at pulling your heartstrings, this movie does that in that sort of way. And not even just for Koichi or for Noriko. There's other characters, and there's other. You feel the plight of these men that went through war. You feel the plight of the people in the various towns and cities. You know, when poor Koichi finally gets home after suffering defeat in World War II, freezing when he should have fired on Godzilla initially, gets home and his neighbor gives him this dressing down. Like, couldn't you have died? It's those sort of, and then you immediately kind of hate her, and then you see her kind of, we get development in her as well, and you realize, oh, okay, she's lost everything too. I think she lost some children. Like it was, nobody really got away unscathed, and this, like, it was as compelling to like, even if we never saw Godzilla, if it was just that part of the film, I was glued. And then on top of that, we get these cool action scenes on the high seas or in the towns where it is Godzilla, and it's like you're seeing the power up and you're seeing the sheer destructive force. There's something there for everyone, and it doesn't cater to it. It caters to the fanboys in a way that shows that we too can grow and become more sophisticated in our tastes and our ability to present these properties. And that's what really, not just Godzilla Minus One, but the last two Godzilla films, Godzilla Minus One and Shin Godzilla, really did beautifully. Those of you that, if you've watched Godzilla Minus One and you like that, I really highly recommend Shin Godzilla, that was directed by Hideaki Anno, who was the creator and director of Neon Genesis Evangelion, which is probably one of the biggest anime series in the past 30 plus years. Just incredible show. And he wrote and directed that, I believe. That was set in contemporary times, but has the stakes, has the power, and has the drama of Godzilla Minus One. And this is something that we were talking about, is I think the reason why these last two Godzilla films have done so well with, not big, massive Hollywood budgets, is they're taking risks with, like, the period. Shin Godzilla is, okay, what if this was real? What if in the contemporary world, the 2020s, right now, this happened? How would that work? That's exactly what we got in Shin Godzilla. Godzilla Minus One. What if this really happened at the end of World War II? How would this work? I like the willingness of Toho to decide, we're going to try different periods. We're going to try different approaches. Whoever has a great script, we're not going to worry about continuity. We're just going to do a great story. And I kind of would like to see, we're starting to hear more about superhero malaise with some of the franchise films in the US. And I kind of think that maybe there's an opportunity for America, for Hollywood, to maybe try what has been going on with Godzilla. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember that literally the last shot of Godzilla regenerating in the ocean deep down, and then it just cuts to black, and that's the end credits.
Yep.
Of course, my immediate thought was, is there going to be a sequel? Is this going to spawn a franchise? And then I remember you saying that you wouldn't be mad if it didn't, just to leave us with that ominous and with that, like on the edge of the seat, whether or not we're going to get a sequel or not. Like, oh shit, is he going to regenerate? We will never know. So
that was the thought. And Shin Godzilla ends with a similar sort of cliffhanger, without spoiling anything.
That's the word. It was escaping my mind. No, cliffhanger. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's what John Carpenter did with this film for most of his career. It's sort of an end. It's a non-ending ending. Like, we've dropped you in and we're pulling you out when there could be more. And I do think there is something to be said for leave them wanting more. And that's really what Shin Godzilla did. Everybody was so blown away by Hideaki Anno's Shin Godzilla and the way it ended. Everybody's like, oh shit, we're going to get he's going to do this like the Evangelion movies. We're going to get more and more, and that wasn't the direction that Toho went. And it does leave you to this day. I think about, I'm like, okay, if he had kept shooting, if he had kept filming, what would have been the next step for Shin Godzilla? What would have happened in that world, that story? And I do think that there is a power to leaving people wanting more. Again, if they decided to do more, that would have been great. But they decided to, no, we're going to go with original stories, original takes, and then they did it again with Godzilla minus one. And like you said, we get that ending where it's not just one cliffhanger.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about the first one.
We get two question marks.
It was two.
Like, holy shit! So wait a minute. So Godzilla could be regenerated in the ocean, but then we've got this other thing that's like, whoa, which is even, you know, higher concept science fiction thing going on there. We're going to try not to tell the people, but again, because it's one of the more fun elements in terms of multiple payoffs for this movie. That's the one thing too. It pays dividends of payoffs by the end. It's 10 minutes before the ending, 5 minutes before the ending, the last 30 seconds, the last 10 seconds, it's like boom, 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 boom. You get all these payoffs. And that is adept, brilliant filmmaking. And that's why I don't mind that they went in a completely different direction with this one, as opposed to building off of Shin Godzilla. Not to say that they couldn't decide if they want to revisit any of them, but this is where I feel like, because it's about the creativity, it's about the best original story to tell, and it really says a lot about Toho, and I think very much with Japanese culture, we know is incredibly creative. It's uniquely creative. The business world of Japan tends to be more small C conservative, and for a movie studio such as Toho to be willing to take their biggest property, frankly, their biggest franchise, their biggest IP, their oldest, maybe one of their oldest IP, and just say, what do you got? Just send us the most original stuff, and then to turn around and produce it, and going toe-to-toe with films like Oppenheimer, like others that literally have 10 times the budget, really makes me feel good as a film lover, as an audience member. But as a fledgling filmmaker myself, it makes me feel good
that other perspective.
That, okay, wait. Smaller budget films, I mean, 15 million, that's still a lot of money. But in terms of budgets of what we see, those are still getting shot. And not only are they getting a shot, they're going toe to toe. I mean, the last Oscars, Everything Everywhere All at Once, even less of a budget, I think less of a budget than Godzilla minus one, sweeps the Oscars. It's a genre film. It's starring actors that all started in genre films, made by two complete unknowns, sweeps the Oscars. So Godzilla minus one is that type of movie that makes me feel good about the potential for original stories in this medium. And just, it's like you, this is just some of the most pure fun I've had in theater.
Same here.
You know,
Same here. I wasn't expect. I mean, I knew what it was about, what the, I guess, setting was, but I didn't think that it was just. I didn't think that it was gonna hit that hard.
Right.
And there were moments I just kept looking over at Mike, just going like,
right.
So good, so good.
And the other piece of it too, like we talked about the incredible artistic restraint that. Let me look at it, that Yamazaki showed for how he used Godzilla and when he showed Godzilla. The same went for the Godzilla theme, which we all know and love. And so when he uses it, it's like, oh fuck! Like you really feel it in your stomach. And I can't remember the last time. Like I think back over my life, like watching like the old Godzilla movies on rerun TV at 6, 7, 8 years old. And those movies didn't hit like that. You didn't have that feeling. It was more, in a way, corny. And now it's progressed to this level where now I hear that iconic theme and I'm like, shit. How much work in these?
I got the same feeling.
Oh,
I got the same feeling. I'm glad they didn't start playing it with Godzilla not in frame. No, they waited until he was in frame.
Right.
Like they played it. They played it right. I mean,
No,
gotta
yeah,
hand
they
it to them.
absolutely
They
did.
knew what they were doing. Yeah, for sure.
It felt really good. So I would put this up with, I think, not that it's a I'm trying to think what would be, because this is something we do on our show, is we
Sure.
think about if you were to do a double feature of Godzilla minus one with something else. To me, it's a no-brainer. I think if you're gonna watch Godzilla minus one, pair it with Shin Godzilla from a few years ago, just because they're two completely new, fresh, uh, well crafted, well directed versions of sort of the same property. Um,
Okay. I still
you
need
know,
to watch that one.
yeah, no, I
I
really
haven't
we'll
seen it
watch
yet.
it. Yeah, we'll check it out because it's so worth your time. But in terms of like the folks out there, Truman and I will always like recommend what would you. There isn't a
Pair it
bunch
with.
that I would. There there might be, I think, one other film that I think you could pair this with, that a non-Japanese film. If you don't double feature this with Godzilla minus one with Shin Godzilla, I would recommend maybe uh, doing. It's a classic film now. I'm blanking. I'm blanking. Hang on a second. Oh my god! I need to start taking my ginkgo biloba. It's hang on. Giant monster film, New York.
Cloverfield?
Cloverfield. Cloverfield, yes. Cloverfield is
That's a
is
good one.
was another one of those movies that I saw. It's from 2008, so this
Mhm.
going back a little bit. Cloverfield, again, like Godzilla minus one, shows tremendous restraint in the threat that we see. It is all about people. The scope of it is so cool. It is so fun, and frankly, would pair well with Shin Godzilla or Godzilla minus one. Uh, those would be my two. I would say Shin Godzilla, Cloverfield, perfect pairing with Godzilla minus one. It's so fun. So again, very mature filmmaking.
Cloverfield was an
Restraint.
original concept, right? Like I
It
remember when it
was,
came out in the hype, but I actually have never seen it.
As a matter of
yeah.
fact.
It's one of those. It's J.J. Abrams directing,
Yeah.
written
Okay.
by Drew Goddard, who he's got a few wins. Let's see. He wrote on Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel TV series. He wrote on Alias and Lost. He wrote The Martian, World War Z. So he's an accomplished dude. He also made his directorial debut in one of my favorite horror movies ever, The Cabin in the Woods. But yes, Cloverfield is one of those movies that when it came out, people who saw it raved about it. It has a lot of critical acclaim, but it doesn't come up as much as it should, and it's definitely in the vein of the giant monster movies. But again, it's just a compelling drama of people dealing with some heavy shit, and it's worth watching. Like I've watched it several times since it came out. Saw it in the theater. Saw it a couple. I've watched. Yeah, anytime it's on, I'm like, oh fuck, I forgot about this movie. And there's new things that
Mhm.
I know. It's so layered. Um, Similar to and there's two other movies. There's Cloverfield. There's 10 Cloverfield Lane, which is a sequel, which you don't think will be as good and is good. And then there's the Cloverfield Paradox, which was the last one, which actually was produced by Netflix, and I've never seen it. But
Mm.
if you guys ever want to sit down and watch at least the first two Cloverfield movies, they're amazing. And certainly the first Cloverfield movie is a perfect companion to either of the two brand new Japanese Godzilla films. Just amazing stuff.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. But
Sick.
what I'm trying to think here. What do you think is, I don't want to say what you like most and what you like least. What for you, out of all of the stuff we've talked about, out of all the praises we heaped on it, what was the biggest surprise for you? Because both of us went into this movie. I hadn't even seen a trailer. I had
Hmm.
heard about it. I had seen like screenshots of like what looked like a 1940s train. I'm like, oh, and then I heard it was set at the end of World War
Yeah.
II. That was
Uh-huh.
it. What for you was the biggest pleasant surprise of Godzilla minus one?
Um, I guess for a visual aspect, definitely the fireball of his
Oh.
heat ray.
Yeah,
It's the perfect just dome, and then
yeah,
the blast. Like, oh my god, they just dealt with two nukes, and then they got to deal with this.
right. Well,
Crazy.
yeah, well, that's one of they really rethought the Godzilla fire blast
Yeah.
in that it's basically just another
Yeah, it's just
fucking
another
nuke. It's
nuke.
another nuke. It's like, whoa, you guys just had
Yeah.
two cities taken out by nukes, and now
Uh-huh.
you have basically a walking nuclear arsenal coming through your cities. The not just how it works conceptually, but how it works physically, like the power up, like you see on
Mhm.
the tail, you see how the mouth opens, and it's then you've got the launch, but then you've got this secondary thing after he sprays the fire, it melts and burns everything away, but then you've got basically an atom bomb that hits right after. Fuck,
Yep.
these people can't
Mhm.
catch a break. But no, I was like,
It
okay,
was so beautiful. Just
it was. You hate to admit it, but it's like, oh geez, like that thing hits. It's like, okay, I have literally nothing to worry about anymore.
yeah. Yeah, so that's for a visual aspect, and of course, we all fell in love with Koichi and like his, his inner demons and the war that he was fighting with himself. But I also did want to touch up on one of the supporting characters. His name was he was the young kid that was a part of
Shiro,
the crew.
Shiro, Shiro.
Yeah, the young kid, and I just
Yeah,
thought like I totally sympathize with him because he just all he wanted to do was help fight. All he wanted to do was help fight. I'm sure that that's how he was brought up. I'm sure that that's how he was, trained or brainwashed. Like, give your life for your country, give your life for your country. But then
right,
like there were constant reminders to him, um, pretty much saying like, hey, like there's just as much honor in not fighting than there is in fighting.
right,
And he still came around at the end too, which like thank God, like he
right.
literally saved them. But
Yeah,
that was really sticking with me for his kind of character arc and the way that he was just so all he wanted to do was help fight, all he wanted to do was
right.
help fight, but then you don't have
And
to
then
continue
you
to.
had the older characters. You had like the captain. You had Kenji, the
Mhm.
engineer. These older guys saying, "Look, if fighting is important, it's also important that we have people left.
Survive.
It's also
Mhm.
important that somebody has to rebuild. Somebody has to keep going." And it is because you see the perspective. Like I see the perspective. Like when you're a younger person, especially when you're a younger man, you're looking for your purpose. You're looking for opportunities
For
to
your
prove
shot.
yourself, and he
Yeah.
didn't get
Mhm.
a chance to really do that in the war. He wanted to do something. He wanted to be useful. He wanted to be helpful. He wanted to have a purpose. And it was fun to watch his arc. Watch again, everyone sort of like the engineer got an arc, the captain got an arc, Koichi got an arc, Noriko
Mhm.
got an arc. Whether the characters lived to the end or they didn't, there were no throwaway characters. That was another thing too. Is
Not
they
one.
know there's so many. Like you could look back like from like 2000 and back. You can look at every single Godzilla film and you realize, oh, this is not a character. This person's a plot device that is
Yeah,
being
yeah.
used to progress the story. But you don't care about them. They're completely one dimensional,
Mhm.
and there are
NPCs.
no throwaways. No throw.
Mhm.
That's a great note because it's again the care with which Yamazaki gave this film that not even the supporting characters are throwaway. You can feel their hopes. You can feel their losses. You can feel their joy. Yeah, it's just a gem all around, man.
100% agree. If you haven't seen it, everybody go watch it. When
Yeah.
it comes out, go stream it wherever you can watch it. It's really
Yeah.
good.
There is, we'll end on this in it because we watched the color version. There was a brief theatrical, I don't even know if it's still out there.
Ooh, black and
Yeah,
white.
the run of the whole movie in black and white, which I kind of want to watch now
That's
uh,
cool.
to get that old school feel. Well, when we revisit this, maybe we'll watch it in black and white. But
Yeah, sure. I'm
yeah, no,
down.
I was so happy that you and Mikey were down to go check this out because it looked like it was going to be good. You don't know because again, I try not to read too much anymore. And
Yeah.
again, no trailers. So I went in sort of under promised and then it over delivered. Like even if I think, and I
Hmm.
end up watching trailers afterward, I'm like, even with those trailers, there's so much that
Did you ever see any like Instagram promo or like any promo on like Facebook or anything?
I saw the poster. That was literally
Okay,
it. And I think I saw, I take it back. I think I saw like a 5 to 10 second trailer of
sure.
just a lady leaning up on the window of one of the trains, and you hear
Mm,
the roar, and then you just see the trains flying through the air, and that was it. I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, okay. And then when you guys were down, I'm like, let's do this. And it
yeah.
was some of the most fun I've ever had at the movie. So I'm glad
Mhm.
you guys were down and you came. But
That
yeah,
really
guys,
was a
check
gem.
out.
Yeah, thanks for thinking of us.
Oh no, of course, of
Yeah,
course.
we
Nobody more
we
to come.
very much enjoyed it.
But yeah, guys, Godzilla minus one, check it out. Pair it with either Cloverfield or Shin Godzilla. You guys will not be disappointed. And yeah, we will catch you guys next time.
See you guys. It was a pleasure being here, Kyle. Thanks for having me.
Always, always.